Aaron, I can't believe you're calling me. My mom just died, and a month later you're calling me? You're such an ambulance chaser, man. You're a scumbag. How did you even get my phone number? Like, I can't believe that you're calling me.
I really appreciate your authenticity. I want to be clear that my intention is not to be disrespectful in any way. It's simply just to reach out and find if we could be of assistance to you and your family. We do have a lot of clients under these sets of circumstances that are actually really appreciative of the fact that we do reach out, because I know it can be very overwhelming, you know, not only from a practical perspective of what to do with the property, but also from an emotional perspective. You asked me a question about how I got your contact information, and for better or for worse, it's actually public when something called a petition for administration, when it's filed at the courthouse. So because we specialize in these types of transactions and help lots of families just like you under the same set of circumstances, I just have an assistant that gathers that information, and I reach out to families and find out if we can help them in some way. I guess I'm wondering, you know, while I have you on the phone, because my job is to help you, it's never to talk you into doing anything. As far as, you know, the real property is concerned, at some point, you know, do you think you and the rest of your siblings, looks like John and Susie and Jill, if the goal and objective will be to at some point put that home on the market, or just to keep it in the family forever?
We're not sure. It's too early to tell. Like my mom literally just died like 30 days ago. I haven't even been appointed the administrator. Like, I'm not sure which direction we're going to go with.
Yeah, and that's perfectly okay. Again, you know, my intention is to really see if I could just provide you with any information that could be helpful. I really do appreciate your willingness to share that with me. The reason that I ask is, again, we've had the good fortune of helping a lot of families under the same set of circumstances overcome the challenges that are associated with the dynamic. And as I mentioned, my job's to help. I mean, it's never to talk you into doing anything. I do oftentimes find that when families are, you know, kind of discussing amongst themselves what to do, and either way is fine, whether to sell or not to, that it can be very helpful or useful for them to get a clear, realistic picture of value. In other words, an equity snapshot where if, and I'm clear that that is an if, you guys did decide to sell at some point, what would be the most amount you could expect to receive for it in its current condition? And net bottom line, what the proceeds would be to you and the family when it all shakes out. Do you think, Jose, that could be helpful or useful information for you guys?
We've already kind of done that homework already. Like, so we went on Zillow already and we see the value already. So I think that as long as Zillow is accurate, then we've already got that information.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. I know that these online platforms provide lots of information. What's very interesting to me as an agent is Zillow gives you the definition of their Zestimate on their site, and they tell you that they can be in this geographic area plus or minus 5 to 10%. So if they say it's worth, just for numbers' sake, 500, it could mean 450 or 550. It's actually a pretty big swing. And usually families want a more precise number when they're, you know, making those types of decisions and choices about what to do. Now, I do oftentimes find as well, and I don't know if this is a situation that you and your family has to deal with or if you've dealt with it already, that sometimes whether families decide to sell or they don't, they can use some extra help or assistance as far as preparing a property either to keep or to sell at some point, such as maybe like an estate sale for items on the inside that may have value, helping to get contents perhaps cleared out or donated to local charities, or even some light handyman work to prepare the property for sale or to keep, right? To keep as a secondary home or something of that nature. Do you think any of that could be of help or assistance to you and your family?
Yeah, maybe. Like, I mean, we've already talked to a couple of estate sale people, but if you have any vendors, just feel free to email them over. Like, we're happy to, obviously open-minded and open to taking a look at those.
100%. And just so you know, there's no financial incentive for me to refer you to anybody. These are just people that we work with all the time, know and trust. And I know particularly for families like you that aren't local here in the area, oftentimes they'll just go to Google versus getting like a local referral. So that could be helpful. I'll make a note of that here. And I've only spoken to you, Jose. You know, I'm aware that there's some other parties. I guess if you had it your own way, do you have a preference either way, like whether to sell it or to keep it?
I would like to sell it, but I think that's where the problem is. Like, we have other people that live at the property that would like to keep the property because obviously they've been living there for 20 plus years.
Yeah. And again, I appreciate your willingness to share. The more you're willing to share, the better equipped I am to provide information that could be helpful or useful in some way. So if it's okay with you, what I'd like to do is ask you a couple questions. My intention in asking is not to be nosy, just to see if I can give you any more information that could be helpful or useful. Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the individuals that are living there, if you don't mind me asking, are they family members or is it like a tenant situation?
No, they're family members for sure. They actually helped my mom for the last 10 years. So they kind of feel a little bit of an entitlement that because they helped my mom obviously care for her, that obviously they should be able to remain in the house. But there's 6 of us, so some of us don't want it, and then some of them do. So it's kind of like it's a complicated situation.
Yeah. And again, most of these are. So I appreciate your willingness to share. It's not uncommon that there be someone that's living in the home. And what I know to be true is that in my professional experience, having helped so many families in these dynamics, there's a difference between having a desire to keep the property and actually having the means and the ability to. So I'm wondering, do your siblings that perhaps are interested in keeping it and the individual that's currently living there, do they have the ability to buy the other 4 out? Or is that not something that's realistic?
I personally don't think so, but I think that's something that they want to explore. They want to explore to see if that's possible. I don't think so, just because obviously like the one that lives there doesn't really work. So I don't believe that they're going to be able to, but I think that they want to try to see if they can keep it.
Yeah, that's not uncommon. So what I'm hearing from you, based on what you've been kind enough to share, that with a very high degree of probability, more likely than not, the property will be sold. It's just a matter of trying to work through the challenges of having, more than one person in the room and everybody has their own ideas, and allowing it to play out in an attempt to try to preserve familial harmony, right? Which I totally get and understand. And I guess I'm wondering, as the personal representative, which you will be shortly, nobody's challenging that. It doesn't sound like that. Do you think from your perspective, when having conversations with your family, having a clear, precise picture of equity, and then also having a plan around vendors and if it makes sense to put any capital into the property versus selling as it is, where it is, that would help you kind of lead the others in making a decision that is best for all parties? Do you think that would be helpful?
I think that would be very helpful. Yeah.
Awesome. So with all of that being said, may I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, based on what you've been kind enough to share with me, Jose, I'm hearing a couple things very, very clearly. The first one is, again, more likely than not, the goal and objective will be to sell. And it's okay, again, if that changes. The second thing I'm hearing from you is that the more information that you can gather as the personal representative, the one that's kind of leading the estate, in terms of equity, a precise picture of equity, as well as some of these ancillary services that could be helpful so you can formulate a plan. And if it makes sense to put any capital in or just sell it as it is, the better equipped you'll be. And the rest will be to make the decision that they feel is best. So what I'd like to do is this. I have a lot of clients that are in a similar stage in the process, just like you, and aren't local here in the area. And what we do initially is we schedule a very simple 10, maybe 15-minute, no obligation whatsoever, phone or Zoom appointment where we can see each other. And what I can show you, Jose, is a couple things very clearly. Number one, what would be that precise picture of equity? So in other words, in its current condition, which I'll ask you some questions about, what would be the most amount we could expect to receive, and what would the net proceeds be to you and the rest of the family? The second thing we can go over is some of these ancillary services, and I can get you contacted with these vendors that we know and trust. And then I can also have a conversation with you with regards to probate and timing in terms of when you can proceed and put on the market. And then at least this way, Jose, whatever your family decides to do, whether it's sooner or later you decide to sell or you don't, you'll have all the most important information you need so you can make the decision that you feel is best as far as how to proceed. Does that sound fair to you?
It does, yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm looking here at my schedule. If we were to connect under normal conditions, would you be available in the evenings or the afternoons? And then we would just go from there. And after that, we go into a pre-qualification conversation.
I love it. So this is what I liked about that call. What I liked about it is when I was like somewhat wishy-washy, like meaning like the family member, it doesn't sound like they're going to be able to qualify, but I don't think that they are. You led the conversation in a way, like to the way that you repeated and approved. You said, it sounds like at some point you guys are going to be selling the property. Because that's really what I'm saying. More likely than not. And that can be a pivotal change in the conversation. Like if you say like, oh, go in a different direction, then it doesn't lead to an appointment. But it's like, okay, everything you're telling me sounds like more likely than not it's going to go into the sale. So you led them in that direction, which I love that about that conversation. Obviously the other thing that
go ahead. I was going to say, like, also, like, kind of, which you probably are going to comment on now, is you hopped on that call like very charged, like angry, and like, and then remaining calm and clear and diffusing that situation, like as best as possible.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. This is probably something that we jumped right into, like, why are you calling me, this or that? Yeah. Obviously, some of the calls aren't going to start off that way, and they're going to start off with an introduction. You mind going over, like, just a quick intro for our viewers to see?
Yep. So what that would sound like is, hi, I was looking to speak to Jose.
This is him. Who's this?
Hey, Jose. My name is Aaron Novello. I'm a local real estate agent here in wherever the property's in, Oxnard, Fort Lauderdale, like wherever it is. Mm-hmm. And I specialize in probate and estate sales of real property. I was reaching out to you this morning because my head researcher pointed out to me that very shortly, if not already, you will be appointed the personal representative in the, forgive my pronunciation, Morales estate. And mm-hmm. I realize I do sincerely that I may be a little premature in some way. I was calling you very respectfully, of course, with regards to the real property on 1265 Plum Street, simply just to find out if ultimately, at some point, the goal and objective of yourself, and it looks like your siblings, Jonathan and Susie and Timmy, if the goal would be at some point to proceed and get that property on the market and to get it sold, and then be quiet. And when you do that, there's a couple of reasons why we're doing it that way. One is I'm saying who I am right out of the gate. All right, here's who I am. I'm a local real estate agent. I specialize in probate and estate, so they're going to know exactly what you're calling about. Then I realize that I may be a little premature. That demonstrates emotional intelligence, right? That it's a sensitive thing. I'm calling very respectfully. You'll notice I actually probably did something like this when I did it. And I've watched you when you communicate, like you do this without, I think, consciously. You'll put your hand over here, where it's like really you just being like authentic, like what you really feel. Yeah. So I was like, I'm calling very respectfully, of course, with regards to the real property, simply just to find out if ultimately at some point the goal and objective of yourself and your siblings, looks like Susie, John, and Timothy, was to get that property on the market and to get it sold. So I'm getting right to the point. And they're either going to say there, yes, no, or maybe. Like yes, no, or we're not sure. So it's a really good track, right? We were looking at a scripting prior to this, and you've developed something where it's like, okay, if they say this, and it's a very good mental kind of map where you can see. So if they say yes, excellent. If they say yes, okay, great. I appreciate your willingness to share that. The more you're willing to share, the better equipped I am to provide you with information that could be helpful or useful. The reason that I ask is we've had the very good fortune of helping a lot of families under the same set of circumstances, just like you, overcome the challenges that are associated with the dynamic. And I do oftentimes find, and then we go into value propositions that we can offer, whether it's offering a equity analysis, which sounds better than a CMA, or, the ancillary services like, clear outs, estate sales, and things of that nature. Now, if they say no, okay, great. Well, I appreciate your willingness to share that. And it sounds as though if you had an offer that was like all cash, no contingencies, very reasonable, right? Close in like 3 weeks, you wouldn't sell it. Your plan is to keep it forever. And then because then they're going to be like, yep, we're going to keep it forever. Like, okay, awesome. Well, my sincere condolences for your family's loss. I wish you and your family the best of luck. And then I move on. Yep. Otherwise, or they might be like, well, we're not keeping it forever. It's like, okay. So then it sounds like perhaps the goal is to maybe hold on to it, maybe try to utilize it as a secondary property for a short period of time, and then decide if that's something that you want to do. I do see a lot of clients do that, particularly here in Florida. They'd be like, yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. It's like, okay. But and then I can proceed from there and asking questions. And if they say maybe, which is the other option, great. My job is to help you. It's not to talk you into doing anything. I appreciate your willingness to share that with me, right? The reason that I ask, and we go down the same track, right, is we've had the good fortune, we've helped, right? And then going down the same way, I find that when families are unsure about what they're going to do next, it's usually very helpful to get a precise picture of equity. I know these online platforms give you like a rough idea, but their estimates could be plus or minus 5 to 10%. It's in the definition of their estimates. So families, really appreciate getting a precise picture of value and equity. Do you think that would be helpful or useful for you guys when having conversations with each other? And then be quiet, and then go the same route about ancillary services and stuff. Yeah. So it's a very kind of compact, clear, direct, to the point conversation, but it has both intellectual intelligence and emotional intelligence, because what people need to recognize is this is a very emotional thing.
100%. 100%. Not only that, it's a very sensitive time. The way I would think about it too is you're coming from a place of contribution, which means you genuinely want to help them as opposed to like trying to take something from them. Now, the only thing I was going to ask you is, I noticed that in your introduction, you mentioned an address. I know that whenever I get the court files, there's an address for the decedent, but sometimes that address for the decedent is the location that they passed away in versus the address of the property that they sold. I typically avoid saying the address in the introduction for that reason, because sometimes the address is not the correct address. It could be like the address of a hospice, or it could be the address of an assisted living place. And then I sound like I'm unprepared. So my introduction actually goes like this. I'll be like, hi, I'm looking for Aaron. Hi, Aaron. Jose Morales here, calling about the estate of John Doe. Yes. The reason for my phone call is I'm a local realtor. I specialize in probate and trust. I know this may be a little bit premature. Was just wondering if you knew if the estate was planning on keeping any of the real property or leaning more towards selling it. And then at that point, they're either going to go into the yes, we're planning on selling it, no, we're not planning on selling it, or maybe. And then the maybe situation is the one that we went over. And in my opinion, that's where most people get stuck. Most people get stuck in the maybe. The yes one is an easy one. The no one is an easy one. And the maybe is kind of like, okay, like, where do I go from here? And that's where you did a masterful job of like digging a little bit deeper in terms of the maybe portion. Now,
and
whenever
the key there in the maybe, what you're saying right now is having a willingness to like politely confront and just like kind of ask questions, right? Where if you'll notice what Jose was just saying that I did is I just proceeded to let him know that I would like to ask him some questions. My intention in doing that is not to be nosy, just to see if I can give any more information that could be helpful or useful in some way. Because if you start to probe, it can feel like an interrogation, and they're like, hey bro, like just back off. You know what I mean? So by stating that, I state what my intention is. I used to imagine, Jose, that everybody knew what my intention is, but then I realized that most people, like the majority of people, think your intentions are nefarious, like not good. So I have to state it clearly, like what the intention is. Once you gave me permission, then I started to ask you some questions and dig right around that, because you hinted at like, well, I have some siblings and some of them want to keep it. And plus there's one living there. But then I asked you that one critical question. It's like, well, I've only spoken to you in terms of what you want. Do you have a preference versus selling it or keeping it? And then it came out. And then I can proceed to ask some more questions to get clarity. And it became very clear. And this is awesome because, people who are watching this might be like, oh, like you guys like were already clear on what you're going to talk about. I had no idea where Jose was going to go with it, right? So
to be honest, I thought we were doing just like an explanation of it. So when you started role playing, I was like, oh, it clicked. I'm like, he wants to do a clubhouse type of situation where we're just role playing the entire situation, basically.
Yeah. Because I want people to realize like, most people teach mindset because they can't teach tactics. They'll spend an hour talking about mindset, but like they can't role play with you live in front of everybody. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So like we want to give you the tactical, like real tangible tools that you need in order to do this. And I had no idea where he was going to go with it. But because I've made so many of these phone calls and listed 50 to 60 of them for like, 5-6 years in a row per year, I can get a clear picture. Like I've heard that scenario hundreds of times. You know what I'm saying? So I have a good idea as to more likely than not what's happening, but I can ask questions to kind of sift through and see where it's at. So it may have been another scenario there is like the one sibling's living there, but all of the others want to sell it. Well, that goes down a different path because there's different remedies to that, right? From a legal perspective. So, like a partition. So the key part there is in the middle like that maybe that can seem like no man's land is just to keep asking questions. That's where people get stuck. They're like, okay, well, I'll follow up with you. Bye now. It's like, no, dude, you got to just keep asking.
So here's some additional questions that I would, or that usually like a talk track that I go down. So like if somebody says, to be honest, like we're not sure at this point. Got it. So it sounds like at this point, it's a little bit premature and the family's still trying to decide like if they're going to keep the property or they're going to sell it. Then what I do is I play with one of the options. So I say, let me ask you this, like if you did keep the property, would this be more of like a family home to keep, like meaning a family member potentially living in there? Or would it be more like for investment purposes, meaning like a rental property? And then if they say, well, it would be a family home and one of the family members would continue living there, I would say something along the lines like, okay, got it. And are all of the beneficiaries on board about having that family member continue to live there? Or is that kind of why you guys are unsure? Maybe some of them are on board and some of them are not on board, basically.
That's right.
And then that allows me to kind of determine like, okay, what is going on? Now, if they say we're planning on keeping it as an investment property, then that's a completely different scenario, you know?
Correct. Yeah. And what came up for me too is as you're saying this, and I love this, bro, we've talked about this before because we have that, like initially we had that like kind of mentor student, like we think very similarly.
Yeah.
Is as I hear you doing that, what popped up for me was me saying like, well, you know, I've helped a lot of families in these dynamics. And, you know, if the family member is going to continue to live there with a high degree of usually they're not able to pay the maintenance and the taxes and the insurance and all that stuff. So again, this isn't to be nosy, just so I'm clear. Are you guys all in agreement to be able to pay for that individual? And, or are there separate funds somewhere that can do that? And then be quiet. And they'll tell you, they'll be like, no, like, you know, we don't really have the money to do it. It's like, okay. So it sounds like from like an emotional perspective, you'd really like them to stay there. At the same time, from a practical perspective, it's probably not reasonable long-term. Is that right? It would become a financial strain. They're like, yes. Okay. So now in my brain, now I'm thinking like, okay, if we sell this property, we can take some of that capital. We did this once. Same that scenario. We sold the property. All of the family members were in agreement. We used those funds or a larger portion, right? Not what was equal to everybody, but the larger portion of those funds to buy the person that was living in the property a condo, pay cash, because now the costs are only the, you know, $500 maintenance fees per month. And then they can live in perpetuity. So that solved that problem. But I wouldn't know that if I'm not continuing to ask questions. I think people, this is just in general with all lead sources, Jose, and you see this, like they think that they can read a script and, you know, kind of convince somebody of something. No, dude, people don't do what you want them to do. They do what they self-discover. So our job is to ask surgical questions to reveal like what's really going on, what the problem is, where the pain points are. And then we can offer solutions to those problems.
Yeah. And even along with that talk track, like if you continue asking that question, like Aaron said, like, do they have the funds or are they in a financial position to do so? Like, are all the beneficiaries on board? Next question is, do they have the funds to be able to keep, do you guys have like, is it a viable financial option to do that? You're either going to know very clearly, like if it's leaning towards yes or no. Now you've almost like qualified the lead to know, okay, do I want to follow up with this person or is this person like maybe not as good of a lead and you can qualify them? So if they say, yes, all the beneficiaries on board about wanting to keep the property. Yes, they have the financial resources. There's a possibility the property may not be sold and that they may end up keeping it, but at least you know that versus in your head thinking like, oh my God, this person's going to sell this property and I'm going to make $20,000 on this sale or whatever it is. At least you know that. And I think that's where people get stuck. Now, the other talk track is we're going to keep it as an investment property as well, too. So you can continue to dig down that talk track. Same, very similar situation, or all of the beneficiaries on board about you guys wanting to keep the investment property. Or if you guys did keep it as an investment property, do you guys need any help renting that or maybe just add some sort of value there?
Yeah, and what popped up for me is like, okay, and let's say you guys, well, a couple questions. One, have you ever been a long distance landlord before?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you did decide to rent it, does it require you putting some capital into it so that way you can get fair market value for rent? Quiet. Do you guys have, and again, this isn't to be nosy, just so I'm clear, do you have the capital that it's going to require to put into it to get it to a place where you can rent it?
You could even ask, like, just out of curiosity, like, how much do you guys plan on renting the property for? You know, just out of curiosity, like, what are the monthly obligations on the property right now? Cause like, let's say that they have a mortgage for $3,000 and market rent is $2,500. That means every single month there would be a deficiency of $2,500, which means that people would have to come in out of pocket. Or let's say that market rent is $3,000 and mortgage is $3,000. Now they're breaking out even on the property as well too. So now it doesn't, so knowing that also allows you to kind of understand the situation a little bit better and see if you could help them as well too.
That's right. So you'll notice for, if everybody listening and watching, mine and Jose's default is to ask more questions at every turn, because we want to get to like as much as possible clarity. The thing about sales that's really hard is just a lack of clarity. You're running around with leads that you think are leads when they're actually not, because you haven't asked straightforward questions and got real clarity, underneath it. Let's say they're like, yeah, we're going to sell it. It's like, okay, well, and I appreciate your willingness to, they're like, yeah, we're going to sell it, but we've had cash offers from investors, which is not uncommon, right? So you're like, okay, I get that. And what I'm aware of is that, usually if the desire is to sell, it's to get top dollar and to maximize value. And obviously those investor types, their intention is to buy at a steep discount and make a profit. My goal and objective would be to help you to, get as much as you possibly can. Now, obviously we get compensated a commission to help you do that, something that we would agree upon that would be mutually beneficial. And I know that in order for me to be able to help you and for it to make sense for you financially, I'd have to be able to help you get more money than if you just sold it to one of those investor types. And more often than not, like 95% of the time, that is the case. We just did one for a family. They had 4 offers on the table. We looked at the comparables. I shared with them without having to do a thing. They could get $50,000 more. And I asked them, hey, do you see any disadvantage to putting it on the open market and seeing? And they said, no. We did, and that's precisely what happened. We got them $55,000 more than what was put on the table with all those 4 offers. And, it went in their pocket instead of somebody else's. So, it's just like at each step of the way, it's continuing to ask questions to find out, where you can add value.
And even like, so I think this is great because I feel like almost we transition into like different objections or different conditions or different situations that you're going to experience. And in my experience, like most of the time when somebody inherits a property, there's always going to be a friend, a family member, a neighbor, a cash buyer that reaches out to them about wanting to write an offer on the property. And now they're thinking like, oh, I may have an offer on the property already. And most agents are like, well, if they have an offer, like there's no need for me, versus understanding that most of those offers that they're going to receive are lower than market value. So what I typically do in those situations, I'll say something along the lines like, well, look, can I make a recommendation to you? If your goal and objective is to get top dollar for the property, what I have done for other administrators is we have excluded any cash offers that they have from our listing agreement, meaning at any point during the time that you and I are working, you reserve the right to work with that buyer before we go into escrow. Now, when I'm marketing it, my goal would be to net you, even after commissions, a higher dollar amount than those offers, meaning that if I'm not able to do that, you're able to work with any of those cash offers and pay $0 commission. So here's the way that it would work. We would put it on the open market. We would see what's top dollar in the marketplace. And then after top dollar, we would subtract the commission. That would give us your net. At the end of the day, let's say that your net is 500,000 and your neighbor wants to offer you 400,000. At least you know what market value is. And you get to decide whether or not you want to sell it to your neighbor, and you know how much money you're leaving on the table. Now, if you're okay with leaving $100,000 on the table, I'm okay with it as well too, but at least you know. Or what could happen if your neighbor's offering you 400, you could ask them to improve their offer and maybe you give them a little bit of a discount. Maybe you sell it to them at a net of 490, but at least this way you know exactly how much money you're leaving on the table. And you have an exit clause from working with me at any given point, meaning that you still reserve the right to work with any of those buyers. Would that be helpful to you?
Yeah. And at the end, like either would that be helpful to you and or would you see any disadvantage
yeah,
doing that? And then be quiet. And they'll be like, because a lot of people ask questions that like to get to yes, but no is the same thing. Where they'll be like, well, no, I don't see any disadvantage. It's like, awesome. So then with that being said, may I make a suggestion? And when I say, may I make a suggestion, I'm asking permission to close, right? So I'm quiet and then I can suggest.
And it's crazy because I learned so much from the probate that I implemented in my traditional business. So I started excluding buyers specifically on probates because I started coming across that situation so many times. So I was like, I'll just exclude the buyer from the contract. And I've only had one person sell to a neighbor in that situation. And it was, at least we knew what top dollar was. And I took they actually hired me to process the paperwork for them instead of hiring me as their listing agent in that case when the neighbor bought it. But I learned that from probate. And now I implement that on my traditional business. So in my traditional business, if somebody has a neighbor or a friend, like, look, why don't we exclude that buyer from whatever agreement that you and I have? And I'll go over that same pitch. Boom, I handled that objection or I handled that condition basically. I've even done it on for sale by owners.
Yeah, and we know that the probability that that's going to happen is very small.
It's very small.
Now they think the probability is very high, but we know better because we do this all the time. We know the probability is very, very low. So it looks like we're taking on risk when in fact we're not.
Yeah, because the probability or the chances of them having a better offer are so slim comparison to the open market that we'll likely be able to get them a better offer in that case. So what I was going to ask you, so that's one of the questions that obviously we could get when dealing with probates. What are other situations that we could get? You're going to get obviously the standard one, which is I already have an agent. You're going to get my attorney already recommended me an agent as well too. You're going to get things like, hey, look, we're doing work to the property before fixing it up. What are the things could we get and how would we handle some of those as well too?
Yes. So we can take a couple of those. So if somebody's like, well, I already have an agent, like truthfully, it's the same way that you would handle an expired saying I already have an agent or somebody else. It's like, yeah, I appreciate that. I know that ultimately if the decision is to sell, which it sounds like it is, that's a business decision really about who can help you net the most and do it quickly and efficiently. And as such, it usually makes sense to get a second opinion with regards to price, commission, and marketing. So price, commission, and marketing. So that way you are fully equipped and you can make the decision that you feel is best. Do you think that would be helpful or useful to you in this instance? Now, the reason why we're saying those three things, those are the things that they really care about in that order, which is price, how much am I going to get, commission, which is really the like one of the main ones they're thinking about or concerned about, and then kind of marketing plan. And you'll be, bro, like, you know, many people are like, well, you know, my cousin's an agent. And you're like, and you say price, commission, and marketing's like, wow, you know, she's like, I don't really see her that much. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're playing to human nature, which is that obviously they want to get, you know, the best value for, you know, what they're paying for. And by doing that, you're just giving yourself an opportunity to get an at bat. I haven't agreed to do it for a particular commission, but I'm kind of planting that seed, right?
And that I've already got a agent commission. There's different layers to that objection handler. Comment down below if you want to see a video on specifically, I've already got another agent and us role playing that situation, all the different layers that you can go to make sure that you handle that the right way. Now, the attorney situation, when an attorney, when they said my attorney already recommended an agent, it's the same thing as I've already got an agent. It's just a different version of it. So the same way, not sure if you're open to this. Here's what most sellers are doing, especially when they're administrators. Typically, most sellers are taking the time to interview more than one agent just to make sure they're getting the best price, the best commission, and the best marketing. Is that something that you're open to? And then if they say no, we've got different layers, which we can go into in another video. Is there any other common things, Aaron, that you see with probate?
Oh, we're going to wait. We're going to wait until probate is complete. And what's interesting, because I know that this is not a uniform process. So I'm an expert in Florida. Jose's an expert in California. But what I'm aware of is that each state, has a kind of a different way of doing it, right? So it's not like a uniform process that's the same in every state. They use different words. In Jose's state, they call it executors. In mine, they call it, PRs, personal representatives. So you have to learn the language, right? And we did a previous video on that. Go back and watch that on how to get probate listings. Understanding the legal aspect of things is part of the value that you can add. So if they were to say to me, well, I can, and again, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not practicing law. I just want to be clear on that. But when somebody says to me like, oh, we're going to wait until it's complete, I'm like, well, I respect that. I really do. I'm not an attorney. At the same time, we have the good fortune of facilitating a lot of these transactions. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but a homesteaded property in the state of Florida is actually shielded. The proceeds are shielded from creditors. Meaning if your family member had any creditors like medical bills, credit card bills, they can't touch any of the money from the sale of the property. Did you know that? And they're like, no, I didn't know that. It's like, yeah. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but when a homesteaded property is passing to linear heirs, which is a fancy word for direct descendants like siblings or children, it technically passes outside of probate. So yours and your siblings' interest in the property vested at the time of passing. Did you know that? And they're like, no. So by you understanding the process, you can actually help them proceed faster, which therefore equates to time, which ultimately equates to money, because every month that goes by with maintenance, taxes, insurance, if there is debt service, it's costing money every month. So they have an option of waiting, let's say 180 to 360 days to get started, or they could be done and complete in, 90 days because they already have an offer. And we just put language in the additional terms and conditions that states that the sale is subject to whatever county probate court approval. And we negotiate an extended closing period, 45, 60 days. That'll be ample time to get order to determine homestead, property to be sold, funds can be dispersed right away. Again, I already see people in the comments. I'm not an attorney. I'm just somebody who's facilitated a lot of these transactions.
Now, even the real question comes, do I have to wait until they're appointed the administrator? Now, I've done it both ways, where in some cases, we don't wait until they're appointed. Usually there's something lingering like a foreclosure or something pressing that they need to get the home sold ASAP, or the trust or the probate doesn't have any financial resources to meet the monthly obligations. In those types of cases, they want to get the process started as soon as possible, because otherwise their concern is that they're going to sell the property. And I've had situations where the attorney is strongly recommending that they wait until they're appointed the administrator, or the administrator, for whatever reason, feels more comfortable waiting. Now, the question that I ask is, although does it look like, just out of curiosity, does it look like any of the family members may contest you being appointed as the administrator? Because if any of the family members are contesting the administrator, then you putting it on the market before they're appointed is a recipe for disaster, meaning that you're going to get it on the market. Like, there's going to be litigation between the family members. If there's ever two people petitioning to be the administrator, it's going to take a lot longer than the traditional process. And that's one of those situations where,
when I find that, I stay away from them. I'm not even you know what I mean? Because I know it's going to take like a year or a very long time.
It's going to take a very long time if you ever see that. Now, if there's not anybody, so if you ask that question and there's only one person, although the family members are congruent, all of the family members are on board, they're all happy with each other, then you could list it before it comes on the market. Obviously, check with an attorney. But I've even gone listing agreements signed, subject to them being appointed the administrator of the estate. And then we put the property on the marketplace after they get appointed. Or if there's a pressing situation like a foreclosure, we put it on the market, and then any offers that are accepted are subject to the administrator being appointed the administrator of the estate.
Exactly. So in the additional terms and conditions, it'll be like, this offer is subject to, Jose Morales being appointed personal representative in the Morales estate. And the critical component there is I would ask it. I just ask it in a little slightly different way. It's like, well, my intention in asking the next question, again, not to be nosy, just so I'm clear and can provide you guidance that could be helpful or useful in some way. Is there any fighting or disagreement amongst the beneficiaries, or is everybody on the same page in terms of selling? if I hear everybody's on the same page in terms of selling, I know it's not if they're going to be appointed personal representative, it's just when. So then I would explain the process. Here's what we can do is exactly what Jose just said, where we can have an agreement authorized. We can put in the additional terms and conditions of the listing agreement, that this listing agreement is subject to Jose being appointed personal representative in the, Morales estate. He signs it as PR. We can also put in there, if it's being prepared for sale, he gives us permission to withhold it from the multiple listing service while it's being prepared for sale, right? And you have to check your kind of local MLS in terms of what the rules are and stuff. Again, I'm not an attorney. We're just sharing with you how we facilitate things, and we do a lot of these. And then you can proceed. They can put on the market, get an offer that's acceptable, then put in the additional terms and conditions. It's subject to extended closing period. You can give that, the purchase and sales agreement, with a letter on letterhead to the attorney stating that this is reflective of fair market value with comparables. So they go to the judge to demonstrate, because when it's a homesteaded property, it needs to be an arm's length transaction. You can't sell it to your cousin for a great deal. And it has to be for fair market value. So here's all the stuff. And then you're done and complete once they are formally appointed, versus getting started at that time, which ultimately ends up saving them like thousands to tens of thousands of dollars, right? So if you could be done and complete in 90 days instead of done in like 180 or like 250 days, that's like, $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 in carrying cost. And oftentimes with these families, like they don't, the property is really the only asset, truthfully. There is no other assets. Like that's it. There's no money to carry it. There's no money to do anything else with it. So speed is actually very valuable. But what leads to the speed is specialized knowledge. So I need everybody to understand, this is beyond just like, hi, I was calling about the home that's for sale up on Banana Street. Is this your? No, you need a higher level of intellectual intelligence. You have to understand the legal aspect of things and how it works. You also need super high levels of emotional intelligence, because it is an emotionally charged thing. You have to be able to demonstrate empathy and sympathy, and lots of people aren't. They're just like, hi, I saw, cousin Bob died. Do you want to sell your house? Or I saw Grandpa Joe died. Do you want to sell your house? Like that's how they approach it, right? So it just requires higher understanding. But with that higher understanding, you can solve problems for them. Some of the family's problem is it's costing a lot of money to them to keep it every month. So they look to, I wonder how Pace would feel about what I'm saying.
Investors.
I was on his podcast not long ago, but like they look to, investors because they're kind of desperate. And what ends up happening
is they come up with creative solutions too. They come up with more creative solutions than most real estate agents.
Than most agents do. So like, Pace asked me when I was on his podcast, he's like, why do you think there's beef between us and investors? I'm like, well, part of it is because we're like competing. Like we have the same like ideal client, target, which is a motivated seller. But also two is that like, I think agents, the very strong voices in the, coaching and training community have really limited people's bandwidth on how to think about this. Like they think about it myopically, which is like one thing, which is a listing. The reason why Pace and his tribe, Sub 2, shout out to Sub 2, is able to help so many people is because they think creatively. They're thinking outside of the box instead of just I'll list it. It's like, okay, well, how can we do creative finance? How could we do like all these other things to help you in this situation? So, I think by leveling up as an agent and just understanding different, like A, understanding the legal aspect of things, but also B, being creative, you'll be able to help more people.
Yeah, I agree. And then in that instance where they're not appointed or they're going to be appointed, but there's a pressing situation and getting the property on the market sooner, you're actually adding tremendous value because you're getting the process started sooner. Like Aaron said, you're saving them money. So like here are different solutions to their problem. Like in some cases, you're going to run into probates where they're like, I only want a cash offer. Work with an investor or make them a cash offer. If that's the only direction that they want to be in, that's a solution to a problem. Basically.
And I find what agents will do is like, they'll literally argue with them. Like, no. Like we could get you more on the open. They're like, look, Jose, I love you, bro. You're cute. I want to pinch your cheeks. Your tie's nice. I don't give a two shits about what you say about listing the property. I could care less. You might as well be pissing in the wind. I just want a cash offer. There is a cash offer on the table. You can make one. If yours is better, I'm going to sell it to you. Like, just give them what they want. Whether you have an investor, what was interesting is Jamil, who is Pace's partner, He has an agent, which we know. She's in Phoenix, and she presents the cash offer to every single seller. And only like 10% of them say okay. But what he gives her is like 50% of the assignment fee or 50% of like the proceeds, which is sometimes could be like 50 grand, $100,000. Now, only, 9 out of 10 people say no. But at least she has that option. So like, it's just thinking more creatively, right? If we look at these platforms, that's what they're doing. They have all of these different options. Like, we'll buy it. We can refer you to an agent. We can list it. Like they can do all these things. Well, why aren't we thinking that way? We should be. We should think more like wholesalers and more like investors.
Well, even like, and I'll tell you how, and this helped my entire business. So the probate business actually helped my entire real estate business because it helped me to get more creative with more different situations. And then I implemented that same mentality to my traditional business. So like some of the things that we've done is like, for example, if somebody is in foreclosure, I've had attorneys reach out to me like, hey, such and such person's in foreclosure. They're $20,000 behind. Foreclosures next week. We can't close on it for whatever reason because of the appointment or the probate court in that little time. So I've advanced money to basically stop the foreclosure. And then basically I get the listing and we end up selling the property.
And you're doing a really valuable service to that homeowner because they would have gotten nothing. Yeah. But by you injecting funds, because Jose's got that money, by you injecting the funds, you are pausing them losing everything. And people are like, well, he just wants his commission. Well, let's think about this for a second.
Yeah.
You are putting a pause on them losing it and getting zero. And then you list it. Yes, you do get a commission, but guess who gets their equity? The homeowner.
They do.
So you're actually doing like a really good service.
So in that case, it was a $20,000 investment that I put up, and that allowed me to double my money on a $20,000 commission. So it's like, I look at it like ROI, and obviously you have to protect yourself. So it's not as simple as just, hey, look, let me upfront the money. There's a lot of different things. And obviously I had a relationship with the attorney, but like, let's say that there's an uncooperative tenant at the property and because it's a trust, you got to remember that a lot of these estates and a lot of these trusts, they're asset rich, cash poor. I'm going to say that again. Asset rich, cash poor, meaning they have all their money tied up in assets in like 10 different properties, one different property, but they have like $1,000 in the bank account. So sometimes they'll have an uncooperative tenant at the property that they need to evict, but they don't have the financial resources to be able to pay for an eviction. So in that case, I've advanced money for evictions. I'm adding value. What does that earn me? It earns me a listing. I've connected them with estate sale companies. I've helped them take items to donation companies. I've helped them do trash outs or clean outs of the property. These are all different value propositions that these people are experiencing. So if you can come up with solutions to those problems, it increases the probability of you being able to get that listing and you being able to help them. Now, remember, whenever you get a listing on a probate, that could mean that you represent the buyer because a lot of times they're priced very well. And sometimes it could even be a flipper and you get a third listing on the resale. So there's so many different opportunities with this niche of cold calling probates.
Hell yeah. And that was dope information. Plus you got Jose hiccuping, which was fantastic.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go. So, I mean, we could talk about this forever, dude. Like, what I'm aware of is this is a fantastic resource. When we go from 6 million transactions to 3.9 million transactions in a calendar year, that's a dramatic drop in volume. And, the challenge for everybody's inventory. I mean, you hear it all the time. Well, it makes logical sense to swim in blue oceans. Red oceans would be like the 4 horsemen, expireds, cancels, for sale by owners. That's great. Like, do it. It's fine. What I'm aware of is lots of sharks, lots of blood in the water. Blue oceans are oceans where there's less sharks and lots of blood in the water, right? So me and you are great whites. We can push into red oceans and get our unfair share. I'd much rather swim in blue oceans. Yeah. So, I would encourage everybody on this call to, or everybody watching this, if you're serious about this, you have to get serious, not only about what to say and how to say it, but you got to get serious about the things that we're talking about. A, having a very deep, detailed understanding of the legal aspect of things. B, emotional intelligence, recognizing that this is a challenging time. C, have value propositions where you can solve people's problems. One of the keys to Jose's success and why he did over $2 million this in the calendar year 2023 in gross commissions is that he's constantly trying to figure out, how can I help you? How can I solve a problem that you have? Versus what can you do for me? Right? Those are two different things. Like, I want your listing versus like, hey, let me figure out how to solve your problems. And more likely than not, when I do, I'll get what I want, which is that you'll hire me to help. They're just two different like planets or two different mental maps.
So what I would say to our viewers is comment below what you want us to do the next video on. And then Aaron and I will do a video on it if we get enough people liking that. Additionally, for Aaron's podcast, make sure to subscribe, like, share. So if you feel that this would be helpful to another agent, send them the video. That way you're helping somebody else out.
That's right. Elite builders. Coast to coast.
All right, guys. Until next time. Thank you so much. Peace.